Chief Revenue Officer at Quartz. For those of you who may not be familiar, Quartz is a media brand. We really focus on the forces that are really shaping the global economy. And this panel, I'm so excited to have so many amazing women on, is really part of our How We'll Win series that we launched earlier this year, really focusing on the fight for gender equality. Obviously, putting women in positions of power, really kind of fighting for everything from inclusivity and what we do about the next generation. And I'm going to allow each panelist to introduce themselves today, but we really wanted to focus on the women who are actually starting their own companies, branching out, and really sort of setting up both their own businesses, but also their own cultures, and learning a little bit about what inspires them and really how they maintain the culture that they really set out to create. So I will start with you, Amy.
Thanks. My name is Amy Nelson. I am the founder and CEO of The Riveter. We are female-forward work and community spaces built for entrepreneurs and freelancers and everyone in between. We have workspace, but also programming to help women build businesses. We launched in Seattle this year, and we have 2 locations, and we're opening in LA this year as well.
Cool. Hi, guys. I'm Clara DeSoto. I'm one of the co-founders of Reply AI. We are a conversational AI solution. We help companies better reach and serve their customers on the messaging channels they already use via chatbots. This is actually my 3rd company. First product I made with actually my co-founder, Erica, over there, was an app that removes traces of your ex from your Facebook profile. I hope you never need it. And then I had a wearable tech for live events company, and we used to work with the Girls Lounge, actually. And now I'm on a bots, so thank you so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. Whoa. I actually knew that would happen. I'm Kelsey Irvine, so I'm the founder of a company called Violet Media. We started 2 years ago, and it's one of the biggest databases of independent directors in North America and a few overseas. So we connect them to ad agencies and brands who are producing their own work. And we've actually recently, as of like 2 days ago, merged with Quiver. So Quiver, mgmt.com, and now we have the capabilities to not only connect agencies to independent directors, but we also produce documentary work. We have a doc project we did with Vice that's here at the festival. It's called Living with Jaguars. It's going to be here on Tuesday till Friday, and it's actually one of the first times in the world that you're placed in the jungle of the Amazon in a VR headset, and it's also room scale, so you can walk around, and there's jaguars, and so yeah, it's pretty powerful. So we get to do a lot of really cool stuff like that.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Sarah Doubledam. I'm the CEO and founder of Darlene Media, and we are a quarterly print magazine website. We also do events and videos all centered around women, helping women feel better about themselves. Our magazine is the only magazine that doesn't Photoshop women's bodies or skin, and we really focus on character and identity development of women and helping women become their best version of themselves.
Hi, that's loud. Hi, I'm Audrey Wu. I'm co-founder and CEO of CONVRG. Like Clara, we're in the bot space. We work on both voice and messaging platforms, and so we did a huge project for the Grammys this year that was on Google Home, Facebook Messenger, on their website, on Kik, and I actually personally coded a lot of this stuff. So, you know, it's never too late to learn how to code. My co-founder, Liz, is up there in the front row in the red dress and hat. We started the company in January 2017, last year. We were profitable, and we closed a round all within 1 year, and we worked our asses off to get there.
Hear, hear. So I think one of the things we can probably all agree on or all have heard stories about is it's not easy to start a company. Being a founder is hard, but being a female founder, I think, is particularly so. And not just because of the fact that only 2.2% of all funding in 2017 went to female-founded companies, or before that, just 1.9%. But there are so many more intricacies involved. But the first thing I want to ask each of you to respond to is, at what moment did you really figure out you wanted to pursue this insanity? Like, when did you decide you want to strike out on your own?
So I was a corporate litigator for a decade, and I was always looking at women and men and how people ascended to positions of power and not really liking the outcome. You know, as a lawyer, women start out as half of law school graduates, and when you get to the top at law firms, women are 13% of partners. And so for me, all of those questions around women in leadership became more pressing when I became a parent. And I decided that I wanted to leave corporate America and start a company to help change the ratio for women in power, change the balance, and work on that. It mattered to me. I have 3 daughters, and so that was part of it. But then also just, I think that women's economic empowerment and starting companies and helping make that process better and more access to capital is a really worthy cause.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think both Erica, again, who's my co-founder, she and I sort of saw this huge opportunity where, to your point, the market is 50% women, but it's definitely, especially in the tech landscape, not 50% women creators. So we saw this sort of huge opportunity in which, women are clearly underserved. Nobody's sort of thinking about, in the way that we are, or at least very few people are, which is why when we created Kill Switch, which was the name of the app, it just sort of opened that door to us. So we really, just saw this opportunity to kind of, take advantage of this underserved demographic and create tech products for them.
Okay, so I'm going to get a bit raw with that answer, but for me, I actually was an account person for 7 years. And I was very unhappy, and I didn't realize that I was unhappy, and I had blonde hair, and I always wore heels, and I always wore dresses, and I just thought that if I made more money and dated another doctor or another lawyer, that I would be complete. And so what happened was I took this really big, high-paying, really responsible job at Ogilvy, and I couldn't fake it anymore, and it was so, I just couldn't fake it anymore. And the day I was going to quit after a month and a half of starting this really big job, they fired me. And it's the first time I was ever fired in my life. And I think it's important to talk about that because I don't want to tell anybody that I was fired because it's a really vulnerable thing to talk about. But it's so important when I look back now because I couldn't do it myself, so I needed to be pushed out. And that allowed me to go on this journey where for the first time in my life, I was like, I don't care how much money I make. I don't care what it is that I do that has status. I'm just gonna go be an extra on film sets because I know that I want to be in production and somehow. And I was the best extra you could have ever asked for. I made $9 an hour, and I was like, how many times do you want me to walk back and forth? Because I will do it 1,500 times with joy. And it paid off. I took a couple random gigs, and within 2 years, I was walking the red carpet at the Oscars with a self-funded documentary that I produced, and I could have never planned that. It was all just because I finally went with my gut and followed my heart and took a lot of risks, and I'm just so glad to be here.
That's amazing. Good for you. Right, Sarah?
Mine is a little bit raw as well. I was right out of college, and I was 22 and really struggling with anxiety and depression pretty severely, and started to look at where my options were for answers as a woman to real things I was going through, and looked at women's media and realized that I didn't attain to any of that. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't rich. I couldn't afford anything. None of it was relating to me. The headlines on magazine titles about 1,000 more sex tips you should have and this $1,300 bra or whatever. And I just thought that this isn't real for women. And so my friend and I decided to start a magazine. We had no idea how to do that. The magazine that wouldn't retouch women, a magazine that wouldn't over-sexualize women, and a magazine that talked to real issues and wasn't just clickbait topics and was really speaking to the intelligence of women as well. And so that's where it all started from, was just from a personal need that I had no idea how to do it, and it's been definitely a long road, but now we're in hundreds and hundreds of stores and have a widespread movement called That's Darling with over 15 million tags on Instagram, and people are creating communities around women having authentic conversations and supporting one another and not competing with one another in that space. And so I like to think that we've really helped pioneer a lot of the positive things that are happening for women right now with Me Too, and with a lot of huge companies deciding to stop photoshopping, with inclusion of different types of women and women of color, and just really pushing for what really matters with women and the conversation around being feminine.
Thank you.
So I actually got the startup bug by just working at startups. And then I realized that, wait a second, I am kind of unemployable at this point. And I met Liz at a chatbot conference. So I actually worked for a conversational AI technology company prior to finding my company. So I had a little bit of background. Liz came from a messaging platform called Kik. We hit it off. We were the only 2 women at that conference. We were on the same panel, and we got lunch. And next thing you know, we were both like, let's do this. We like left our jobs and we went full in, and it was scary, but like amazing. Like it's a roller coaster, but I mean, it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding.
I want to hit on the topic of vulnerability a little bit, because I think you guys were so brave to bring it up. And I think that, networking is one thing, but finding support when you're on this journey and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to really start to admit that has to be something else. Kelsey, I'd love to start with you and talk a little bit about where you find support in being a founder.
Yeah, thank you. So where I find support is a lot of places. I think I should first talk to when I first started producing after my summer of being an extra on film sets. I ironically got a couple jobs being asked to be a producer, and so I didn't know anything about producing. And I actually didn't know I was a producer until HBO bought our film and gave me a producer credit, and then I realized I was a producer. And so before I got any job, I literally reached out to every single person. A lot of them were men, because women are now growing into this space, and I'm so proud of that, and we just need to keep pushing for it. And so I would just reach out to them on LinkedIn and be like, hey, you're an executive producer. Can you meet me for coffee and tell me what you do? And they'd go, okay. And then I'd meet them for coffee and just be like, so how did you do it? Like, how did you get here? What did you do? And I did that with everyone. And then even before I spoke on a panel, I reached out to a bunch of very successful panelists. I either went to their panel talks and went up to them after their panel and said, hey, what's one piece of advice that you can give me? Or can I have 15 minutes of your time for a phone call to find out how you did it? Or in a lot of cases, I just kind of put myself out there and talk to different CEOs or executives of companies. Again, mostly men, but I'm really confident that in the next couple of years, there'll be a lot more females. And a lot of us, I think, are here right now to set the bar and be the mentors for women that are moving into this space. And sometimes I'd meet them for coffee, and I'd be like, I have to pitch this person something, because I don't just want to be the cute girl that's meeting them for coffee. And so I'd find random things to pitch them. And none of them got made, but I learned so much about myself, and I learned so much about them and what they're looking for, and I learned how to conduct myself.
That's awesome. Anything else on that?
Yeah, actually, I have a lot of trouble asking for help. I just do. And the most vulnerable part of last year was, we were trying to raise early in the year, and we weren't able to, and it kind of broke me a little bit. And at that point, I actually reached out for help. And I asked for help, and I asked for advice, and it just came in like waves.
How did you do that?
I think I started seeking out people that I really admired, and I have a very strong women's network in LA. I'm gonna start crying because it was just like such a rough time, and to be able to have people to talk to and just people that have been through the same thing, it's like heartbreaking, And I finally asked for help, and it was so hard to do.
That's amazing. Clara, I want to talk to you a little bit about that time where you probably felt like, talk about when Kill Switch was essentially killed.
Yeah. So our app, Kill Switch, the one that removes traces of your ex, was actually shut down 10 days after we launched. We launched it on Valentine's Day, so it went viral. We had a whole partnership with the American Heart Association, so broken hearts could help broken hearts, like all this stuff. And it was downloaded in over 100 countries. My favorite was the coverage by like the local news outlets. They're like, you'll never guess what's live on Twitter. Like really, it was very endearing. But yeah, 10 days later, our API access got revoked, and it was like one of those holy shit moments. Like we have poured so much into this, and Facebook just didn't like that we were enabling the mass deletion of content. I don't know why. So that was like I said, that was 10 days after Valentine's Day. So we actually, we're like, that's it. We're gonna go to South by. and we're going to make it our mission to get in touch with literally anybody who will listen. We talked to a lot of people, and it was this like kind of South by fairy tale moment where we ended up like Samsung was sponsoring something. Like there was like a round table where you could sit down with successful entrepreneurs, and we got to sit with Scott Case, founder of Priceline.com and Startup America. And we explained to him what happened, and he was like, all right, listen, you need to do one of two things. First, you need to send a private message to Sheryl Sandberg or Mark Zuckerberg and give them a graceful out. And then step two, you have to, then you take it to the press and you make it a digital rights issue. And we're like, great, billionaire Scott Case, how do we do step one? And he takes out his phone, types in Sheryl, puts it on the table, and is like, oh, what's that over there? And it was like all of her contact information. Which, sorry, Scott, for totally ratting you out now, if you ever watch this. Anyway, so we're like, it was like Eric and I look at each other like, we took a picture of his phone and wrote to her, and in retrospect, a very menacing email, just being like, we're gonna tell all this press like what you're gonna do, blah blah blah. Totally, not expecting anything in response. She wrote back in 15 minutes. Sheryl Sandberg, yeah, and it was one line, and it was just, I'm going to send this to the head of the department that takes care of this, and we'll get it sorted out. S. And it took 6 months, a lot of back and forth, because and I will never forget the negotiations with their global platform policy head, this like terrifying lady, and then the Apple Review Board. Anyway, it was a journey, but it's one of those moments where like you either like curl up in a ball, or you like at the end of the day, like bad things are going to happen. That's not the variable. The variable is how you respond to them. And we begged, borrowed, and stole, and like asked people who for advice. Lawyers that would make sure that we weren't actually threatening her in our emails, things like that. But yeah, for me, it's always been so incredibly critical to be able to ask for help, and I think that's the biggest learning as an entrepreneur, is that like I don't know everything, and that's okay. But thank God that we have the people around us that do know significantly more. Amy?
I definitely, I've had an interesting experience in founding the Riveter, because I founded the company when I was pregnant with my third daughter in 3 years, and
wow.
I had some investors tell me, don't tell anyone you're pregnant. Hide it as long as you can, because people will just see you as a vessel. After I had my baby and I was out in the valley raising, and I think my baby was about 3 months old. I had a great pitch. It was an hour long. And at the end of it, the VC said, okay, I just have one more question. I was like, go for it. And he said, do you think you're physically up for building a national company? I kind of looked at him and just paused and said, I don't understand the question. And he said, well, you've got 3 little kids, one's a baby. Are you physically able to go out there and build a company across the country? And I paused and I said, I built this company while I was pregnant, meaning I can do anything. And I think for me, I have had to really take the mind frame of turning what society, and particularly men, see as a weakness or a vulnerability, and leaning really hard into it as a strength, because it is a huge strength. I think being a mother has made me learn to prioritize. It has made me physically stronger. I can operate with like no sleep. And so I think, as we as women can take what people see as weaknesses and explain to people why they are strengths.
Let's talk about raising, and I think that's that is a unique but important part of raising funding, because to your point, you taught me just a few moments ago that the average founder is 39 years old. So for women, that's exactly when you're in the middle of wanting to start a family and start your life, and how can we ultimately make that not a blocker but a part of the journey? When you all were raising funding, I mean, I don't know much about all of your backing, but like, are they male backed VCs? Are they female backed VCs? Have you found different experiences with both? Clara, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So we've been fortunate in that we went through an accelerator program, which I highly recommend. It was with RGA, and they just do such a tremendous job of helping to empower and push forward female founders. So they really were, really instrumental. It is a male team, but they have incredibly strong women on the team as well. And then we also, initially raised from a strategic investor from Japan. They own call centers all over the world, and they figured that chatbots are going to undercut that business. Why not invest in a solution that's going to bring it? We had to send our male co-founder to Japan because that just that was tough, but it was the right decision. And then the same goes, and now we're currently fundraising. We just got a term sheet. Yay! Thank you. Yeah. And then, but yeah, it's I do have two brilliant male co-founders, and I think that it helps.
It is, like when we talk about the 2% number that women founders receive 2% of VC funding, mixed teams, I think last year got like 15%. So crazy. Still horrible, but somewhat better.
Yeah.
Do you want to go for it?
Sure. I'll go ahead. Sure. We actually started on Kickstarter, so we had a little bit of a different story there, and then have done several rounds of angel investors, which have been actually couples of men and women together of 5 different families, which is interesting. I think balancing that masculine and feminine, because we felt like the conversation around women also involves men and what is their part in helping support women. So I've been able to tap into some men that see the problem and also want to support that, and I've been really, really grateful for that. But now that we've been growing more, and we're actually going after a Series A round right now, and I'm kind of in the place that you're at. It's been pretty discouraging, to be honest. I've talked to female VCs and male VCs, and just the process is hard, and it's a lot of calls, and it's about finding the right team that cares about what you're doing. Like, they have to have that as a passion. For us, we're really focusing on what is the mental health status of men and women in our culture and young girls, and that is something that can be a little ethereal. It's a little bit more passion and heart-based, so a lot of times people don't see dollar signs attached to really strongly mission-driven companies that there isn't just a clear path to a lot of money. And so that's been my struggle for sure, is just trying to sell that is also in need, as well as other industries that are very rapid growth and bring a lot of quick return. So that's been my challenge for sure, is art and the state of us as humans. How do you fund that? How do you monetize that as well?
I think for us, we're an accelerator right now. So we're in an accelerator called XRC Labs, which is in partnership with Accenture and Parsons School of Design, and it really was the right place for us to be. Granted, I said I kind of had a major meltdown in the summer, but this was the right place, right time. The team is predominantly women. They're so supportive. But one thing we did notice is that, this is a great program for us, but the other VCs we would talk to, the goalpost would always keep shifting. And it was very different for us than it was for other companies. We came from experience in chatbots, and people were just like, "Oh, you're so cute." No, we know what we're doing. So
is that a trend? When you're is cute and pretty and sweet?
Oh, well, there was a meeting that Liz and I went to last year at South by. The first thing out of the guy's mouth, "You guys are so beautiful."
Thank you. You are so
They
handsome.
ask you how old you are. I always get that. I'm like, how old are you, old balls?
What do you say?
They always ask how old I am, and I'm like, how old are you?
So I didn't actually get any funding with my company. Someone told me to say I bootstrapped it. I've never used that term before, but I guess I bootstrapped it. And what that means is I just didn't have any funding. When you're a producer and you're producing content and you want to produce a documentary, you want to produce a commercial, you can't really go up to someone and say, "Hey, can you give me $1 million to make this story?" They're going to be like, "No." So I guess the advice that I would give, if I could give any advice to anyone in my situation where you're not in a situation where you need funding, I think all these ladies on this panel absolutely needed the funding for sure, is just do what you can now and then adjust as you go. And so for me, I just had to do what I could in the moment. And that means not waiting until I have a website, or waiting until I have this pretty thing, or waiting until I have, this job, and then I'm going to talk about it. It was like, okay, I have an email address that says kelsey@violetmedia.com. I'm going to go to Cannes, and I'm just going to go try and get business. And that's what I did. And then the rest just kind of comes. And the other thing is, there's a term in my industry where they say you're only as good as your next project. And so for me, in the beginning, I just treated every single project like it was the best thing in the world. It didn't matter how small it was. It was just, I treated it like it was the best thing in the world and gave it that attention as if it was $1 million job. Because then what I got out of that is if it was small, when it was finished, it looked really amazing. And I was able to take that and then go and pitch other jobs and say, look what I can do. I never told them that I did this for this measly amount of money. I was like, look what I can do. Look what we can do. That's another correction I have to do is I stopped saying I and I started saying we. And people kind of see you as, oh, you've got this team around you. You've got connections. You've got people. And that just sort of changed everything.
The Riveter, we've raised 2 rounds, and we're venture-backed, and although we do have some amazing female investors, the majority of our investors are men. And it was something I experienced a lot that really bothered me when we went out to raise, which was so hard. It is just so hard. But one thing that really bothered me was that when I first started talking to people, every man I talked to at the end of our conversation would say, you should go talk to person A, B, and C. And all of those people were women. And I love talking to female investors, but there are far fewer female investors, so your odds are fewer or less. And then also, I mean, you invest in a business because of the numbers, because of the return. And so finally, at the end of these conversations, I started saying to people, you know, I appreciate the offers of introduction, but I can talk to men about the Riveter, even though it's a female-focused business. So it's, you know, something to think about.
I always think of, you guys are familiar with Cindy Gallup, this like,
Yes.
prolific woman. We built her chatbot, the Ask for a Raise bot. But she has this great line, which like, it pains me to admit just how poignant it is. Yeah, think like a straight white guy. Yeah.
And a mediocre white guy.
Well, and like, sorry, I love I'm marrying a straight white guy, but like, the thing is, you know, you, like, before going into these meetings, you kind of have to like adjust the way that you're thinking and like be like, you know, I would, you know, be more humble, like they wouldn't be. It just, it's a terrible mantra, but it's effective, at least in this transition period.
Oh, absolutely. I see men touting numbers that are completely outrageous. They're completely just making things up, and they will publicly say these things, and I'm like, we would never say that, and I think it's just something that, about being a woman, that we just don't go out saying these ridiculous things that are not true.
Yes.
I was going to use a different Cindy Gallup line that I actually included in my deck, my pitch deck. Cindy Gallup also said, there's a lot of money to be made by taking women seriously, and I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think? Yeah, totally.
We love you, Cindy.
What do you think is still sort of driving this boys club entrepreneur thing? And you know, how can that be helped? Like, what can be done? Does it happen on the inside? Does it happen from public, private? Where does this start to get a lot better, not just 0.3% better?
I can try and answer that question. I think I saw this question before this panel, and I was like, oh, I don't want to answer that question because it's either going to make people really happy or really offended. So I was thinking a lot about this question, like, why is it so many men, and why are the females having such a hard time? And then I thought about my own experience and what I've been doing, and I've never really felt like at war with men. Do you know what I mean? I've never gone into a boardroom and been like, I'm at war with you, and I'm going to like kick you down and I'm going to like take over. I always kind of thought of it as, you know what? Unfortunately, for a long period of time, women were encouraged to stay at home with the kids and men were at the office working. And maybe some of those CEO men had wives that didn't work. And this is such a stereotype. But I think it's important to think about because now I don't think it's that women can't do it. I think that it's that we have such a huge barrier of change that we have to push at really, really hard and for a long period of time. And change takes time, and change takes work, and change takes effort. And so with that, it's not, you know, for me, I try not to see men as like my enemy, but I like to see them as my ally. And I like to see like, okay, you've been doing this for a long time. You've had a lot of male mentors. You've been really successful. What are you doing that's making you successful? And what can I learn from you? And then how do I take that, spin it my own way, and make it better for me? And at least, you know, and then maybe I didn't have a female mentor, but now I can help mentor other females and then start that change.
That actually brings up a great point of what do you think men can do? There's a few men in the room. I mean, if you could speak to, you know, the entire investment community, I mean, how can men help?
I'll take a stab. Two things. I think men can just ask the women in their lives, the women they work with, the women they work for, the women who work for them, what are we doing right? What can we do better? That's a good place to start. And then I think, the other thing is that we all have to recognize, men and women, but this is more important for men in the sense that we are all part of a problem with implicit bias and pattern recognition. Men tend to invest in men because they identify with the ideas more. They identify with the person that they're looking at more. So you have to men have to acknowledge that and think about it when they're making investment decisions, hiring decisions, all of the above.
Yeah, very well said. And I think that also, part of the challenge is that they look at who are the leading, the unicorns out there, and they're predominantly men. So I think a big turning point is when we get more women in that position. But it's sort of a chicken or the egg scenario. I think what's been really phenomenal, especially over the last year and change, is seeing more collaboration among women. I think that's really sort of just such a, it's palpable. I mean, look at the Women's March, and I think that, to your point, yes, you don't go in and you see these men as your enemy, but I think a lot of, historically, women have seen each other as that enemy. And I think that's sort of a big thing a big way to change that is we should be helping our sisters out more. I mean, I'm very proud that, in the bot community, we have this great core of fembots, we call ourselves. Yes, yeah, there we have two more back there.
There's a good...
Yeah.
Yeah, we really pull each other up. It's a very male-dominated industry, and we all have a very loud voice in it. For me, I live in Los Angeles, so the climate there is a little bit different. I belong to an amazing women's group called the City of Angels, and it's VCs, entrepreneurs, and it's just badass ladies, and we just help each other out. We have a give and get philosophy, so you give, and then you get, and it pushes you to ask for help. And it's just been an incredible, incredible group of women and I'm so fortunate to have their support in my back.
So before we get to sort of final thoughts and advice from each of these ladies, so that's what I'm going to ask you next. I'd love to just open it up to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? No?
Bueller.
Covered it all? There you go.
Do any of you have an ask for us in the audience? What can we do to support you?
Great question.
I think for females, when I became an entrepreneur, I changed a lot of my friends. I still have my old friends, and so it's not like I got rid of them or anything like that. But I realized that to the point of all the men being predominantly in the entrepreneurial space, I really wanted to have that support system, like you were saying earlier, of these females. And so what I'd say the audience can do is make really strong networks with really strong women. And it may mean going up to someone and it's really uncomfortable and saying hi and getting their number and then following up. And I did that at the Girls Lounge in Cannes that I was so fortunate to get to go to. And I met so many women and I kept in touch with them and I asked them for advice and they introduced me to other women and they connected me with them and I got work out of it. And even if I didn't, I felt like I was really supported. And I felt like I was supported in a landscape that was talking to what I needed to hear.
Anything?
Yeah, fund us and work with us. So that would be my ask, please.
Same here.
Pay it forward. I think it's really important. I will remember all the help I got, and I will pay it forward.
Well, and we hustle. And I've done a few, pitch competitions, and when I do it with dudes, it's this. Sorry, but it's shooting fish in a barrel. So easy to stand out. But when I do a pitch competition where it's all women's, I am shaking in my boots because they are all so fierce. I mean, it's your Cindy Gallup quote. We do excellent work, and it's not. Yeah, that's all.
Then I'm going to ask one more question before we wrap up. Those of you who have co-founders, talk about choosing the process of choosing the right co-founder. I mean, you obviously, do a lot together. You spend a lot of time together. For those of people who are sort of thinking about, either starting something themselves or looking for a co-founder, what advice do you have for them?
Don't find someone that's exactly like you. You don't do that. I mean, Liz and I just hit it off from day one, and we've been so lucky. I don't think all founder relationships are like that, but we complement each other's strengths and find someone that does that with you. I think that's really important.
Yeah, my co-founder is actually my husband, and that's a super interesting dynamic as well to work with your spouse. A lot of people ask me, how do you do that? Should I do that? Would you recommend that? And some days I would say yes, some days I would say no, but I think that it's really, if they're different enough as well, almost looking at them like you would just an outside founder as well. Like, do our personalities complement one another? Are we going to destruct our relationship by doing this together, or are they complementary? You know, so for him, he's more like, let's do it, I don't care, very fearless type of person, and I'm a little bit more reserved and like wanting to think about it, wanting to perfect everything before we put it out there, and so he's super relaxed and I'm a little bit more intense, and so that just works really well together, and we happen to make it work really well. But I think, yeah, finding definitely that differentiation, what are your different strengths and how do they play off each other? Because if you've just got two dreamers or, you know, two different types of people, it's like you need that diversity.
Yeah, you know, Erica and I, we were roommates in college, and I think, you know, absolutely we're very different people, and we have totally different tastes in dudes, which is like such a fundamental cornerstone, yeah, of like female friendship, unfortunately. And then the other thing is, like, you can't be afraid of having those hard conversations. You know, Sheryl Sandberg, Aunt Cheryl, you know, she at Facebook they have this culture of, you know, of hard conversations. That shouldn't be something that you should avoid. Like, you need to, like, just, again, that's not a variable. Those are going to occur, but, you know, how you handle them, and that, you know, you go into them freely and you talk about the hard shit, like, that I think that, you know, establishing that early on is really critical.
Okay, I just wanted to answer that because my partner is also my life partner. I guess I can call that because you're not my husband. So he's in the front row taking pictures. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And what I'd say is just like follow your gut and don't let your head muddy it up, because when we met 2 years ago, I was starting Violet Media. I had no website, nothing. And he like had this fancy website. He was working for Discovery, blah, blah, blah. And we like met and had this 3-hour meeting, and he was like, oh, so, and I was holding my own the whole time. And he was like, oh, so why don't you just like quit Violet Media and just like come work for me? And there was a part of me in myself that said, yeah, you should go work for this guy. Like, you don't even have a website. You don't even have money. You don't even have clients. Like, what are you doing? You don't even know what you're doing. And I thought that, and I instead, something in my stomach, like, I felt it, and it came up, and I let it come up, and I just said, without any hesitation to him, no, thank you, but if you'd like, you can come work for me. And then we continued to date. And then 2 years later, until 2 days ago, we've now partnered, and now it's going to be Quiver and Quiver Films. But we needed to go through that to see our working styles. If we had have started working right away, it would have been a disaster. We both have big egos, and we both want to get our way. And now we know how to work with each other, and it's great. He does finance stuff and contracts, and I'm more like creative.
So before we wrap up, based on what you know now, what you wish you could tell yourself before you started this, what advice do you have for sort of a younger you, or if you were going to do this again?
2 pieces of advice. Be really comfortable being really uncomfortable all the time. That's the best skill you can teach yourself as an entrepreneur. And then that you also have to get really comfortable with getting to 60 or 70% and going, and that is good enough, and you'll fix the rest as you go.
Yeah, that's really good advice. You know, I almost wouldn't want to talk to my younger self, because then I think I would have chickened out from doing the things that I did. You know, just do it, go for it. And yeah, I think you know, just like asking for help sooner. I mean, I think Audrey asked for it, but as soon as I realized that, you know, as an entrepreneur, so often you have to fake it till you make it, right? But you know, as soon as you realize that you can have those mentors, you can have that accelerator program, or those people around you that you can kind of drop that shield and ask for help, and be like, you know what, I don't know how to do X thing, and that will get you to figure out how to do that thing. So you know, asking for help sooner.
Get it in writing. I hate putting stuff in writing, and it's totally screwed me over a couple of times. I had a film that was about elephants that I really wanted to make, and I didn't put it in writing who the director was and who the producer was, because we were just so like passionate about it, and we were like going to make it happen. And what happened was that one of the individuals wasn't able to work on it, and so I tried to buy him out of the project, and he thought I was kicking him out, and then we just couldn't move forward. So even if you don't have money for a lawyer, or you don't have a lawyer, just like put it in writing. I am this role, you are that role, our goal is this, and this is what is required of us. It doesn't matter if it's like legally stamped, just do it, and then you can make it more formal later.
Sarah?
I would say that definitely that quote, there's some different ideas on who said it, but that comparison is really the thief of joy. And I think it's important to look at what other people are doing in your space, but not compare yourself, and really try to stay in your lane and be super confident, because the moment you hear something, you can just make an assumption. Like when I heard that you just raised money, I was like, oh, I'm in that space where I can't raise money, and you feel discouraged. But then 5 seconds later, she's tearing up saying, but it was so hard. And I was, so your instant perception of someone is like, they're successful, they made it, everything was easy for them, but then you hear real stories. So it's just so surface level, and really trying to not let yourself compare in that way, but realize that everybody struggles, everyone has setbacks, and you just need to stay in your own lane and surround yourself with people that can support you when that happens.
Yeah, my number one is ask for help. That was a big, big problem I faced. And you have to kind of develop a thick skin. I used to take everything very personally. Like if something bad happened at my job, I would cry. And this past year, not really. I mean, I did have a moment where I broke down, but you have to be very, very strong. And don't be afraid of no's. Yeah. If you believe in it, go for it.
Awesome. All right. Well, Amy, Clara, Kelsey, Sarah, Audrey, not only thank you, but just keep on kicking ass. Good luck. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.